Did you know that the maps you see today have profoundly shaped Africa's destiny, often distorting its history and enabling exploitation? This is the story of how Africa was visualized, manipulated, and ultimately reclaimed on the map. Our journey begins long before the age of European exploration. We will examine the earliest attempts to chart this vast continent, revealing the biases and hidden agendas embedded within these lines and symbols. The story of African maps is not just about geography, it's about power. Let's begin with some of the earliest known attempts at mapping the world, including Africa. These maps, often incomplete and based on limited information, reveal more about the mapmaker's worldview than about the continent itself. One significant example is the map created by Muhammad al-Idrisi in 1154. His world map depicted Africa with an incomplete southern outline, reflecting the limited knowledge of the continent's true extent at the time. He, like many, believed Africa was uncircumnavigable. This perspective would persist for centuries, until Bartolomé Dias rounded the Cape of Good Hope in 1488. The rediscovery of Ptolemy's Geographia in the 15th century had a profound impact on European mapmaking. Ptolemy's structured approach provided a framework, but it also introduced inaccuracies that would persist for generations. Africa, in Ptolemy's vision, was often distorted and misrepresented. But not all early maps were created equal. The Catalan Atlas, dating back to around 1375, offers a strikingly different perspective. It respectfully portrays African people and leaders, reflecting a pre-slave trade era when European views were less tainted by the dehumanizing logic of exploitation. This atlas stands as a testament to a time before the full force of the transatlantic slave trade reshaped European perceptions of Africa. But perhaps one of the most fascinating examples of early African cartography comes from an unexpected source, China. Produced in 1389, the Deminghuny II, or Amalgamated Map of the Great Ming Empire, is a massive silk map that depicts Africa as part of a broader worldview. Remarkably, it accurately outlines the East African coast, demonstrating that Chinese explorers, led by Admiral Zheng He, charted these shores more than a century before their European counterparts. While Europeans were beginning to rediscover classical knowledge, Chinese explorers sailed the Indian Ocean, interacting with Swahili ports like Kilwa and documenting the landscape. Fast forward to the 19th century, and we find a critical period in the mapping of Africa. The Library of Congress holds a collection of 183 maps of Liberia, a nation founded by freed American slaves. Among these is Benjamin Anderson's 1868 map of Liberia's interior along the St. Paul River. Anderson, a black Liberian-American explorer, undertook expeditions in 1868 and 1874, providing invaluable insights into the region's geography, resources, and indigenous populations. His work, often overlooked in favor of European narratives, charted over 200 miles of the St. Paul River and identified over 50 indigenous ethnic groups. Anderson also noted the presence of valuable resources like rubber. His maps stand as a testament to African agency in the face of encroaching colonialism. Maps like Johnson's Africa, published in 1866, provide a snapshot of the continent before the full force of European colonization. These maps show pre-scrambled kingdoms like the Ashanti Empire, the Sokoto Caliphate, and the Ethiopian Empire. They also reveal the growing European presence, with colonial footholds like British Gambia and Freetown in Sierra Leone. However, vast swaths of the interior remain unlabeled, reflecting the limited knowledge and control that Europeans had at the time. The Berlin Conference of 1884 to 1885 marked a turning point in African history. European powers gathered in Berlin to formalize the scramble for Africa, dividing the continent among themselves with little regard for existing political boundaries or ethnic groups. Maps became tools of division, used to carve up Africa into colonies and spheres of influence. This conference, conducted without any African representation, set the stage for decades of colonial rule and exploitation. By 1935, maps of Africa depicted a continent almost entirely under European control. Italian Somaliland and Eritrea, British Rhodesia, Belgian Congo, and French West Africa were just some of the colonies that dominated the landscape. Only Ethiopia and Liberia remained independent, a stark reminder of the extent of European domination. The maps of this era reflect the culmination of the scramble for Africa, solidifying colonial borders that would have lasting consequences. But African contributions to cartography were often suppressed or ignored. Thomas Bassett's 1998 study, Indigenous Mapmaking in Intertropical Africa, sheds light on how local African cartographers provided crucial information about river routes and geography. These contributions, often uncredited, guided Portuguese explorers and other Europeans, yet were rarely acknowledged in official maps. Sketch maps of the Sahel, created by local populations, proved invaluable to early explorers. Prester John, a mythical Christian king believed to rule a kingdom in Africa, was a recurring figure in medieval European maps. This legend, perpetuated from the 12th century onward, served to rally support for the Crusades and to legitimize European intervention in Africa. The legend often overshadowed the realities of powerful Islamic empires like the Mali Empire, which rivaled Europe in wealth and influence. The height of the transatlantic slave trade in the 18th century coincided with a shift in how Africa was depicted on maps. Maps of this era often emphasized coastal forts and resource extraction routes, while deliberately ignoring the interior kingdoms and societies that were being devastated by the slave trade. This erasure served to dehumanize Africans and to justify the brutal exploitation of the continent's resources and people. The Berlin Conference, as we've seen, was a pivotal moment in the mapping of Africa. However, the participants often relied on outdated and inaccurate maps, leading to arbitrary border divisions that continue to have repercussions today. The creation of enclaves, like Cabinda in Angola, separated from their ethnic kin by the Congo River, is a direct result of this ignorance and disregard for local realities. The consequences of these arbitrary borders continue to be felt today, fueling conflicts and hindering development. In the post-colonial era, many African nations sought to reclaim their identities by renaming themselves and their territories. Northern Rhodesia became Zambia, Southern Rhodesia became Zimbabwe, and the Gold Coast became Ghana. These renamings represent a rejection of colonial labels and a renewed sense of self-determination. Contemporary maps are increasingly incorporating indigenous toponyms and knowledge, reflecting a growing awareness of the importance of accurately representing African geography and culture. Digital tools like Google Earth now incorporate African GIS data, empowering communities to stake their land rights and to manage resources more effectively. Pan-African initiatives, such as the African Union's 55-member map, emphasize unity and cooperation over colonial divisions. The Boer Great Trek in the 19th century led to the creation of maps that justified apartheid homelands in South Africa. These maps, promoting a narrative of white settlement and dominance, were challenged only after the end of apartheid in 1994. Recent debates have also questioned the role of 1935 maps in legitimizing Italian fascist claims to Ethiopia, leading to Ethiopia's reclamation of its sovereignty. So, how can we ensure that maps become tools of empowerment and understanding, rather than instruments of oppression? What steps can be taken to decolonize cartography and to accurately represent the diversity and richness of the African continent?